Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi taala wabarakatuh. My name is Ahmad Zainul Aziz. I am from Group 5 Semantic with my lecturer, Mrs. Yenti, SSMPD. So, our group consists of 5 person, namely me, Ahmad Zainul Aziz, and then Bintang Cikar Hamada, Dadang Hawari, Ikotus Soleha, and Ratna Wulan. So, this is our video of explanation about sentence as argument. And then, I think I should start now. Before I start, I want to tell you what is semantic, as well as you know that semantic is a branch of the linguistic that concerns about meaning. In other words, semantic is the study of meaning. And the sentence is the largest independent unit of grammar. It begins with a capital letter and ends with a period, maybe question mark or exclamation point. So, the first point of sentence is argument. That is full statement clauses. Full statement clauses is a clause that has some characteristics. Subject, pronoun as subject, full possibility of verb modification is a full clause. A combination of adjective and preposition might be followed by an abstract complement. The same adjective may have a clause as a complement, in which case the preposition disappears. Clauses can also occur in the subject position. You can see the examples in our paper. I will send you later. Okay, a clause that has some characteristic, subject, pronoun as subject, and full possibility of verb modification is a full clause. Reduced clauses, which we examine below, have neither of these characteristics. Similarly, a combination of adjective and preposition may be followed by an abstract complement. Aware of the problem, disappointed in the result, sorry for the trouble. The same adjectives may have a clause as complement, in which case the preposition disappears. For example, we weren't aware that the meeting had been cancelled. John is disappointed that you can't join us. I'm sorry that the election involved so few real issues. And this is some other adjectives that can be followed by a clause with a preposition dropping out. Afraid of, aware of, uncertain about, or certain about. Confident of, disappointed in, doubtful of, or doubtful about. And the last one is sure of. Clauses can also occur in the subject position. Let's start again with parent phrase that can be replaced by clause. For example, that Jane came to the party surprised everybody. It surprised everybody that Jane came to the party. That Mr. Goodson remembers so many things is unbelievable. It is unbelievable that Mr. Goodson remembers so many things. Subject clauses at the beginning of a sentence are unusual. Instead of this order, we more often introduce an empty word. It postpone the clause to the end of the sentence. And number two, the second part of sentence as argument is question clause. Question as well as statements are embedded in other sentence. They may be information question, as in following example. I wonder when the concert was. In other words, when was the concert? Robert doesn't know what time is it. In other words, what time is it? Do you remember where you put the tickets? Where did you put the tickets? In other words. Okay, I think that's all. You can see the examples in our paper. And the next materials will be presented by second speaker. Thank you.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Well, I am Dadang Hawari from Group 4. In this video, I will present about non-factual clause and verbal nouns. Okay, let's begin. The first point is non-factual clause. What is non-factual clause? Non-factual clause is the present or absent of the ending "-h" with I, you, or a plural subjects. This distinction is lost. Well, we have now considered four kinds of clause: full statement, full question, infinitive, and gerunds. The next kind of clause resembles the full statement but is different. There are some sentences and I'm going to compare the sentence. Number one, I insist that Ronald works very hard. Number two is I insist that Ronald work very hard. And then number three, I insist that Ronald should work very hard. Number one is different from number two and a three, but number two and a three are quite alike in what they say. In number one, the subject I insists that a certain fact is true. In the other two sentences, the embedded clause tell what the subject maintains ought to be a fact. In number one, the embedded clause contains information that is present as true at the time of utterance. In the other two sentences, the embedded clause states what someone is authority. It seems one to be true at a later times, whether true at the time or not. Some speakers of English prefer to contraction, prefer the contraction with should. Some prefer the contraction without should, but we have used it only in a formal communication. The full clause in number one is a factual clause, and we give the name non-factual clause to the embedded clause of number one and number two. With or without should, as long as the subject of the clause name one person other than I or you, there is a difference between the factual clause of number one and the non-factual clause of number two. The present or absent of the ending s with I, you, or a plural subject. This distinction is lost. I insist that the word very hard is ambiguous. Of course, there is a clear distinction between factual clause and non-factual clause. If should is used for the latter, but not all speakers make this distinction. Okay, number one, I insist that they work hard, and then number two, I insist that they should work hard. And there is a clear distinction for any subject if the verb is be, whether should occur or not. And then two examples for Number one, we insist that your parents are ill. And then number two, we insist that your friends should be ill. The factual clause can have various modifications for the verb we insist that your friend was late or had been late, etc. The non-factual clause has no such modification. Okay, we continue to the second point is verbal nouns. What is verbal noun? Verbal nouns is the ing form, the present participle of the verb. Use it as a noun. It can be used in all the places that a noun can be used, but still keep some characteristic of the verbs. It is sometimes called the gerunds. You are familiar with gerund clause as in the sentence. We watch Mark winning the race. Compare the sentence. We applaud Mark's winnings of the race. The second sentence contains a verbal noun. form like the gerund by adding ing. The difference between gerund and verbal nouns is in the kind of contraction they appears in. The subject of the verbal noun is typically possessive, and the object of the verbal noun is preceded by all verbs forms a gerund by adding ings, common verb of Old English origin like wins, forms a verbal noun in the same way, so that the only difference is in the syntactic contraction. In the French, Latin, Greek part of our vocabulary, however, verbal nouns are formed in a number of different ways but are always distinct from gerunds. For example, discovery, explanation, improvement, response versus discovering, explaining, improving, responding. The next group of sentences contain clause in a subject and object position, and the clause contain verbal nouns as the example show when the verb requires a preposition before a following objects. The verbal noun keeps the same preposition if the verb is not followed by a preposition. The verbal noun in short ups. There are some sentences for examples. Number one, I enjoy conversation. We converse. You respond to that question was brilliant. You respond to that question. The company's employment of a large labor force has added considerably to our local economy. The company employs large labor force. And the last, the president will soon announce her selection of new cabinet officer. She selects a new cabinet officer. If the verb has an offered subject, that subject becomes possessive before the verbal nouns, as the shown if the verbal nouns has a attached subject. The verbal noun is preceded by the. Here is a summary of the clause structure discussed in this chapter. Full statement clause with open subject. They know that I opened the letter. It's strange that they are not developing a new product. Full statement clause with open subject. I can imagine what Marilyn wants. Hector didn't tell us if they are developing a new product. Non-factual clause with open subject. I demand you that your bill should be paid. Should it shine? Non-factual clause. And then infinitive clause. Open subject. They expect me to open the letters. Attached subject. I intend to open the letter. Gerund clause. Open subject. They watch me opening the letter. Attached subject. I deny opening the letters. Verbal noun. Open subject. They accuse my opening of the letter. Attached subject. I defend the opening of the letters. Alright, I think that's all of my explanation about non-factual clause and a verbal noun. I'm so sorry if I make a mistake in this video. And thank you so much. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Infinitive clauses. This type of infinitive clause begins with to. There are two types of to infinitive clauses in terms of having or lacking subject. The first type is to infinitive clause with subject, and the second one is to infinitive clause without subject. Throughout the study, both types are considered. That is why the term is usually not always used in plural. it is important to know that this to is not a preposition as it is not followed by any noun phrase. Compare A. I know that Sarah waits for Sally. B. I expect Sarah to wait for Sally. The sentence with expect contains one kind of reduced clause and an infinitive clause. The personal pronoun that replaces Sarah is her, not she, and the verb wait can be expanded only a little. It can be perfect, I expect Sarah to have waited, or progressive, I expect Sarah to be waiting, or both, I expect Sarah to have been waiting. But to wait does not distinguish present and past, and it cannot be preceded by a modal verb like can, should, must, or will. Next example, A. The Eagles expect the Hawks to win the game. B. The Eagles expect to win the game. The infinitive clause in A reflects a sentence or proposition. The Hawks win the game. What is the embedded proposition of B? Officially, the Eagles win the game. We do not say the Eagles expect the Eagles to win the game, nor the Eagles expect themselves to win the game. So the latter is possible. Instead, a rule of English grammar requires a noun subject in an infinitive clause when the subject of the infinitive, here the Hawks, is different from the subject of the main verb, here the Eagles. But if the subject of the infinitive is the same as the subject of the main verb, there is a tacit subject. In the first sentence above, the infinitive clause has a noun subject, the Hawks. In the second sentence, the infinitive clause has a tacit subject, the Eagles. If the clause has a noun subject, it is introduced with the preposition for as illustrates. Other adjectives that take infinitive clause are these, all of which have human subjects. Effort, content, eager, glad, happy, impotent, sorry when an infinitive clause is the object of a certain small group of verbs, the preposition to does not appear. The construction following had, let, and help are infinitive clauses, but infinitive clauses after have and let do not have the words to, and infinitive clauses after have need not have to. Next, gerund clauses. However, there is a group of verbs that can have as object an infinitive clause without to or a gerund subject. A gerund clause has a verb with the suffix ing. Note the following paired sentence in which the same verb is followed by infinitive clause and gerund clause. For example, A. I saw Mr. Hall come out of the garage. I saw Mr. Hall coming out of the garage. Next example, Rach heard a baby cry. She heard a baby crying. Gerund clauses with tacit subjects are seen in the next group of sentences. I enjoy attending the theater. Edward Dennis opening the letter. Marilyn has quit smoking. The subject of the gerund is the same as the subject of the main verb. The sentences are about my attending the concert, Edward's opening the letter, and Marilyn smoking, as well as my enjoying. Edward's dining and Marilyn's quitting. A small group of adjectives takes gerund clause complements with a preposition between adjective and gerund. Who is responsible for doing this? I'm grateful for you taking time off. Other such adjectives are estimate of, aware of, grateful for, thankful for. All the predicates discussed so far with gerund clauses following are two argument predicates. There is a subject, a predicate, which may be a verb or an adjective. The term a clause, which may have a noun subject or a tacit subject. How about three argument predicates with gerund clauses? Deborah Effett allowed forbade suggested waiting. With the first shown in sentence 34, the following gerund clause seems to have a tacit subject, but the real subject is an unmentioned somebody that is not identical with the main clause subject. There is also an indirect object that is stated and that is identical with the subject of the clause. The bride gave advice or permission or encouragement or a suggestion or a warning to someone about waiting.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. My name is Ratna Wulan from English Literature 6A. I'm from Group 5 Semantic, and I want to continue the explanation about comparing types of clause. Different kinds of clause can present different kinds of meanings, but this obvious only when the same predicate can be accompanied by different kinds of clause. The verb agree, for instance, can be followed by an infinitive clause and a full clause. The example: A. We agreed to meet again the next day. B. We agreed that we will meet again the next day. And C. We agreed the price are to hike nowadays. The verb agreed followed by an infinitive clause indicates a commitment on the part of the subject to do something. A is about our commitment to meet the next day. That is really all that can be expressed by the infinitive clause after agree. A full clause can express all kinds of fact and possible fact, including commitment on the part of the subject. There is not much difference between A and B. However, C is not about a commitment but about knowledge or a belief that we hold in common. Some other verbs that can take a full clause or an infinitive clause are decide, expect, hope, result. A. We convinced Herman to throw away his smelly old pipe. B. We convinced Herman that he should throw away his smelly old pipe. And C. We convinced Herman that he didn't know what he was talking about. Unlike agree, convince is followed by an infinitive clause with a verb subject. We confide another person to do something. That is, we use language successful with another person, causing him or her to do something. We can also use language successful with somebody, causing him or her to accept the truth or validity of some statement. That is what the full clause express. And C. Note that the example A implies that Herman threw away his pipe, but the example B goes only as far as his accepting that this is the right action. The verb remind is synthetically like confines. If you replace confines with remind in example A until C, you will find that the infinitive clause and full statement clause have the same sense, the same relation to each other. Of course, remind is semantically different from confines, so it shares the sense of using language successful with another person. And the other example, A. The museum wouldn't allow us to photograph the exhibit. And B. The museum wouldn't allow photographing the exhibit. With allow and the verbs list below, the infinitive is used when there is an overt subject for the verb in the include clause. Her photograph, there must be a subject. It has to be stated who is or is not allowed to photograph. The gerund clause is used to avoid mentioning the specific persons allowed or not allowed to photograph the exhibit. The statement applies to all people. Okay, maybe until here my explanation. Less and more forgive. And the last I say, wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. In the name of Allah, the most merciful, King of the King, Lord of the world, and the Master of the day after. Honorable to our lecturer, Damayanti, and to all my friends whom I love. My name is Binu Chikaramada and I'm from Group 5. Today I will explain about synthetic ambiguity. Okay, let's enjoy it. Synthetic ambiguity. What is the synthetic ambiguity? In English grammar, synthetic ambiguity, also called structural ambiguity or grammatical ambiguity, is the presence of two or more possible meanings within a single sentence or sequence of words, as opposite to lexical ambiguity, which is the presence of two or more possible meanings within a single word. The intended meaning of a syntactically ambiguous phrase can generally, although not always, be determined by the context of its use. Syntactic ambiguity presents two or more possible meanings with the sentence or phrase, and this is also known as structural ambiguity. When dealing with syntactic ambiguity, it's helpful to use your context clues to uncover the true meanings of the sentence or phrase. And next is how ambiguity leads to a misunderstanding. Syntactic ambiguity generally results from poor word choice. If care is not used when selecting praise that's taken in as connotative rather than a denotative context, many have a more than one meaning, or if the sentence is which their use are not properly constructed, the results can often be confusing for readers or listeners. Here are some examples. The professor said on Monday he will give an exam. This sentence means either that it was on Monday, that the professor told the class about the exam, or that the exam will be given on Monday. And next is using speech cues to decipher synthetic ambiguity. In cognitive psychology, authors M. Enzak and M. Michael Kahn, tell us that some synthetic ambiguity occurs at a global level, meaning entire sentences can be open to two or more possible interpretations sitting in the sentence. They are cooking apples. As an example, the ambiguity is whether the word cooking is being used as an adjective or a verb. If it's adjective, the refers to the apples, and cooking identifies the type of apple being discussed. It's a verb. They refers to the people who are cooking the apples. Next is synthetic ambiguity in humor. Synthetic ambiguity is not usually something one strives for in clear communication, however, it does have its use. One of the most interesting in one double meanings are applied for comedic purpose, ignoring the accepted concept of a phrase and embracing an alternative meaning often end in looks. For example, one morning I saw an elephant in my pajamas. How he got in my pajamas, I don't know, by Grogu Mark. The meaning is the ambiguity here is who was in the pajamas, Grogu or the elephant. Grogu, answering the question in the opposite way of the expectation get his log. Okay, thank you. That's all for me. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.